passengers from mainly black and Asian backgrounds were at a higher risk of death, but was criticised for failing to make any recommendations. In the House of Commons last week, the Equalities Minister, Amy Badenoch, said this was because Public Health England were not able to do so. But BBC News has learned that a second report exists that hasn't yet been made public and understands it contains a number of proposals to protect these groups. Dr. Raj Bhopal, a senior academic on the Usher Institute at Edinburgh University, has told the BBC he was asked to peer review this report. He says the 64-page document, which contains both recommendations and a lengthy community consultation, must be published.
I understand more than 4,000 people participated in the consultations around this report. I wonder how they're feeling now. I feel let down myself. If you consult the public, you must publish the results. Otherwise, you've wasted their time, you've wasted your own time, you've wasted taxpayers' money, and you've lost trust.
After being approached by the BBC, the government said it will now publish this report next week. In a statement, it added, the Equalities Minister was referring only to the published report.
The Chief of the Defence Staff has said more needs to be done to tackle racism in the military. In a letter to servicemen and women, General Senior Carter said recent events have brought the issues of racism and discrimination sharply into focus. And he said increasing diversity in the armed forces needed to happen at a faster pace. Jonathan Dick.
A source said the letter from General Senior Carter followed soul-searching during a meeting of heads of defence yesterday. The service chiefs, who are all white and male, agreed that recent events have brought the issues of racism and discrimination sharply into focus, and that they owed it to those in uniform who are black, Asian and other ethnic minorities to try to look at the issue from their perspective, and to listen and to respond. In his letter, General Carter described the armed forces as a rich mixture of faith, colours and gender, where people were valued for their abilities and not what they looked like or where they came from. Around 8% of the armed forces are from ethnic minorities, with a target to increase that to 10% over the next year. Statistics show they're more likely to make official complaints about bullying, harassment and discrimination. General Carter said the services needed to force the pace of change and to continue to root out this.
Attorney General has apologised for joining President Trump on a widely criticised walk to a church in Washington, D.C. earlier this month. The staged event took place after authorities forcibly dispersed anti-racism protesters who had gathered there for a largely peaceful demonstration. General Mark Milley said his presence had created a perception of military involvement in domestic politics.
The commissioned uniformed officer was a mistake that I learned from, and I sincerely hope you all can learn. We who wear the cloth of our nation come from the people of our nation. We must hold dear the principle of an apolitical military that is so deeply rooted in the very essence of our republic.
Amazon has banned all police forces worldwide from using its facial recognition technology for a year. The decision follows concerns raised by civil rights advocates, particularly in the US, about the potential for racial bias in surveillance software. Here's our technology correspondent, Rory Catherine-Jones.
Facial recognition technology has made huge strides in recent years, with much of the innovation coming from China. But there's also been growing concern about its use for surveillance by both law enforcement agencies and private companies. Earlier this week, IBM announced that it would no longer offer facial recognition software, amid concerns that it might be less accurate at identifying African American faces. Now, Amazon says it will stop allowing forces to use its recognition software, which can match photos on an officer's smartphone to those on a database of suspects. The company said it was imposing a one-year moratorium in the hope that Congress would bring in regulations on the ethical use of the technology. The analyst Stephanie Hare says this is a key moment in the debate.
The Amazon decision is very significant because it's an example of a big tech player
sentences will pass back to the state-run National Probation Service. Labour welcomed what it called a privatisation of the system. Our Home Affairs correspondent Danny Shaw.
In 2014, the then Justice Secretary Chris Grayling overhauled probation by outsourcing the supervision of low and medium risk offenders. Part privatisation of the system was beset with problems, so last year a new model was announced. Instead of monitoring offenders, private companies would run rehabilitation services under 8-year contracts worth £1.3 billion. Now, though, the government has abandoned that idea, having decided that the entire probation system is better off in the hands of the state. Robert Buckland said the National Probation Service would provide more flexibility and resilience amid uncertainty about caseloads following the coronavirus outbreak. Alongside voluntary groups, private firms can bid to operate specialist services for employment, housing and drug treatment, but in June next year, the probation system will look broadly the same as it did before Mr. Grayling's reforms.
The bitter debate, much online, over transgender rights has intensified after the author J.K. Rowling published an explanation of her views on the subject. Her blog post says her perspective is partly informed by personal experience of abuse and sexual assault. Critics accuse her of transphobia, and supporters say it's the Trans Rights Act themselves resorting to hate speech. Here's our home editor, Mark Easton.
Today, Ms. Rowling responded to an article about equality of people destroyed with a tweet. I'm sure there used to be a word for those people. The out, whimpering, wounded. Backlash was furious. Arguments of the rights of people gender, victim on both sides, Rowling decided. The 3,000-word essay. I have never talked publicly about being a domestic abuse and sexual assault survivor. I am mentioning these things now. Imagine that. But out of solidarity, huge numbers of women who have histories like mine. J.K. Rowling says as a teenager she might have been persuaded to transition and is particularly concerned at plans in Scotland to make it easier to get an official gender recognition certificate confirming the gender change. However, was a trans activist in Glasgow.
Trans people are indispensable. We are already marginalised in this country.
Terms with the truth about his identity. The woman who created him now finds herself at the centre of a storm over the complexity of identity in modern Britain.
The parent company of British Gas, Centrica, is to cut 5,000 jobs by the end of the year. Several other firms have also revealed today that they're reducing their workforces, largely as a result of the coronavirus pandemic. They include the aerospace manufacturer Bombardier, the German airline Lufthansa, and the industrial group Johnson Matthey. With the details, here's our correspondent, Simon Dobbins.
Centrica was planning redundancies before, but the virus has made things much worse. Last year, British Gas lost more than £800 million after the government put a cap on gas and electricity prices, just as hundreds of thousands of customers were switching to rival suppliers. Thousands of furloughed and most of the staff of job losses concentrated on office employees and managers. Nearly 1 in 5 of Centrica's employees are to go this year. Half of top managers will be showing the door by the end of August. Air travel has been at the centre of the economic storm. Virgin Atlantic is making 300 pilots redundant this week, part of reductions it warned about last month. The German carrier Lufthansa says it will shrink its workforce by 22,000. At Bombardier in Belfast, which makes wings for Airbus, workers have been braced for cuts. They've heard that 600 permanent and agency jobs are being lost after the workforce of 3,500. The impact on the motor industry is spreading. Johnson Matthey, which makes catalytic converters for cars, announced 2,500 jobs will go over 3 years. That's across the world, but more than a quarter of its staff are in the UK.
stock markets around the world. The 100 share index ended the day 253 points lower, 4% at 6,077. On Wall Street a short time ago, the Dow Jones was down 1,376 points, or 5%, at 25,613. On the currency markets, the pound is down 1.1 cents against the dollar at $1.26.5, and against the euro, sterling is down 1.4 cents at €1.11.1, which makes a euro worth 100 pence. The government has continued to insist the Housing Secretary, Robert Jenrick, acted properly when he approved a £1 billion property scheme involving a Conservative Party donor, despite the decision subsequently being ruled unlawful. Richard Desmond gave the Tories £12,000 a fortnight after the project in East London was given the green light. Labour says it raises grave concerns about cash for favours. Here's our political correspondent, Ian Watson.
Robert Jenrick shared a table at a fundraising dinner with Richard Desmond last November, but instead he refused to discuss Mr Desmond's proposed development. Mr Jenrick then approved it on January the 14th, against the advice of his planning inspector. This was one day before the local council was due to impose an infrastructure levy, which would have cost Mr Desmond between £30 and £50 million. The council mounted a legal challenge. The Secretary of State's lawyers admitted that the decision was unlawful because of apparent bias. In the Commons, Shadow Housing and Communities Secretary Steve Reid called for all correspondence surrounding Mr Jenrick's decision to be published.
By an astonishing coincidence, just 2 weeks after the Secretary of State took his decision, Mr Desmond made a generous donation of £12,000 to the Conservative Party. This sequence of events raises grave concerns about cash for favours. If he wants to restore trust, the Secretary of State must immediately publish all documents and all correspondence relating to this decision.
Robert Jenrick wasn't in the chamber to respond. The Housing Minister, Chris Pincher, was sent instead. He insisted that Mr Jenrick had acted properly, and that it was not unusual for a Secretary of State himself to take planning decisions where a high amount of housing was involved. The Minister also said Mr Jenrick had no relationship with Richard Desmond and wouldn't have been made aware of party political donations.
The most ambitious athletics event of the season is getting underway in Norway this evening. The organisers are calling the first virtual meeting the Impossible Games. Although Oslo is hosting the event, the athletics is not simply limited to the city, as our sports correspondent Joe Wilson explains.
At 10 to 8 UK time this evening, a race will begin in Oslo. 4,500 miles away, a race will begin in Nairobi. It is the same race. 5 Norwegian runners, 3 of them Ingebrigtsen brothers, will run 2,000 metres. The Kenyan team, including the 1,500 metre world champion Timothy Cheruiyot, will do the same on their track. Best 3 times from each team will be added together to decide the winner. Organisers call it the first virtual race in the history of elite athletics, but the competition seems real enough. The Norwegian team running on the famous Bislett track will have an advantage, according to the Kenyan coach, Bernard Omar.
We are not crying babies, no, and we are not complaining at all, because we have our own system of work, and for us to say, yes, bring it on, we will show the world what we can do with a little training.
Other events tonight include solo record attempts using wave light technology. The lights flash along a rail next to the inside lane. If the athlete